Hi book friends, I'm Erin, and this is Erin Go Read. So this is a wrap-up of the books that I have read in the first half of May. I've read 6 books. 2 of those I listened to on audiobook, and 1 is a graphic novel. The first I want to talk to you about is The Mermaid and Mrs Hancock by Imogen Hermes Gowar. First of all, I just love this cover, those colors. So this is a historical fiction book about a merchant, Jonah Hancock, who is a lovely man. I just really fell in love with his character. He is single, he lives with his sister, and his ship captain, he thinks that his ship he hasn't heard anything from his ship or his captain from quite a long time, and he thinks that the ship is probably gone. And his captain and his ship show up, and the captain has a bit of a surprise for him, and that is that he had traded, I can't remember if it was the ship or something substantial, for this like mummified mermaid. And so Mr. Hancock is quite confused about this, but the captain convinces him that people will pay to see this mummified mermaid. This is the only one in the world, and you need to capitalize on this opportunity. And so Mr. Hancock does just that, and through showcasing his mermaid, he is offered some business opportunities, and it brings him into some higher society than he's normally with in the merchant class. And through this, he comes to meet Angelica, who is a courtesan. Now, I have a bit of confusion about, is she actually a courtesan? What does it mean? There seems to be some euphemism perhaps being used. What I would call a madam is called the abbess. And so I was not clear at all on, are these women actually prostitutes working for a madam? Are they actually women in need who are being taken care of by nuns at a monastery? Because that didn't seem like the lifestyle that they were leading. So anyhow, it's a bit inconsequential, but took away a little bit of the story from me because I kept kind of trying to work this out for myself. Anyhow, Angelica, this courtesan, meets Mr. Hancock, and he is quite smitten with her. She's a beautiful, accomplished woman, and he, not so much. He has this mermaid, and that's pretty cool. She's looking to marry up. She wants a handsome, rich man. And she kind of toys with Mr. Hancock a little bit and basically tells him that she's going to give him the time of day if she can get him a mermaid, which, of course, she doesn't think he's going to be able to come up with a mermaid. So he now gets stuck on this idea of getting another mermaid. So the story goes on, and ultimately it is about, do you actually want what you think you want? And once you get what you thought you wanted, is that a good thing or not? So I really enjoyed this. There was that little bit of the confusing part for me about the abbess and the courtesans, but really interesting relationships happen between those female characters that are involved in that part of the story, as well as Mr. Hancock and Angelica, and I really love Mr. Hancock. So I gave this book 3.5 stars, and especially if you like historical fiction, I really recommend this. Next, I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I finally got on the Taylor Jenkins Reid bandwagon, and I'm on board for it. Since I read this, I picked up her most recent book, Daisy Jones and the Six. So we follow Monique, who is a kind of mid-level journalist, and she gets specifically requested by Evelyn Hugo, who is this like old Hollywood starlet, to do this interview, do this piece for her about this dress auction that she's having for charity. So Monique and her editor as well are quite confused as to why Evelyn Hugo would be asking for Monique. There are far better writers at the magazine than Monique, but that's what Evelyn Hugo asked for. So Monique shows up for this, and she's questioning Evelyn too as to why. And Monique finds out that this is not about the piece for the dress auction. It actually is Evelyn asking Monique to write her biography. So Monique is in this position where she's being offered this amazing opportunity to write what she knows will be a hit book on Evelyn Hugo. but she doesn't know when she's going to be able to sell this. And meanwhile, she's expected to write this piece for her magazine. And so she has to kind of really get a backbone and stand up to Evelyn Hugo and this very powerful, intimidating woman and get what she needs, which is to keep her job and to be able to, maintain her lifestyle until it is that she can sell this book. So then we then follow Monique and Evelyn as Evelyn tells her life story through the story of her 7 husbands and her true love. So we find out who her true love actually is. We follow different iterations of love and lust that she has through these 7 husbands. And it reminded me a bit, in the way that the story is told, reminded me a bit of The Princess Bride, where we have the grandfather who's telling the adventure story to the grandson. And so for the most part, you're into the adventure story, or in this case, you're into the past of Evelyn's story, and then you're brought to the future, you're brought to the present day, in Monique and Evelyn talking in the present day, or we have some bits of Monique's real life outside of Evelyn as well. So I really liked that the way the narrative structure of the story, that kind of in and out, because you'd get so deep into whatever Evelyn's story would be, and they're like, oh yeah, this happened in the past, this isn't happening right now. And as we get further into the story, eventually Evelyn reveals a secret to Monique, and this changes the way that Monique feels about Evelyn. So they have to overcome this or not overcome this, what have you. And I thought it was fantastic. I was so absorbed in this book and really cared about what happened, what was going to be revealed in this story. So I gave this 5 stars, and I'm very much looking forward to more from Taylor Jenkins Reid. Next up, we have Becoming Unbecoming by Una, a graphic memoir. So this is the story of Una's life in the 70s in Yorkshire, while the Yorkshire Ripper, who is like kind of a copycat of Jack the Ripper, was on the loose. This explores gender violence, how women are listened to or not listened to, how male violence can go unpunished. In this case, the police had the actual serial killer interviewed 9 times. They had very specific information and descriptions from victims, including Una, but basically if something didn't match their concept of what something should be, they just dismissed information. So they were not listening to women who were telling them very specific information about the man that did this, and he goes on for years and years continuing to hurt and kill women. This was beautifully told. I think the fact that this is a graphic memoir really adds to it, as you get a lot of times emotion can be portrayed in a way graphically that is perhaps more impactful than it being written out for you, spelled out for you. So I really enjoyed this. This was 5. It's hard to say that you enjoyed a book about sexual violence and murder of women, but it was very well done. And I gave it 5 stars. Next up, we have a bit of a short story novella, somewhere in between there, by Haruki Murakami. This is The Strange Library. And this book in and of itself is like the physical book is kind of part of the story, and it like folds open. The very first page here, we have super big text. The rest of it, it's still pretty large text, not that big, and there are multiple pictures involved in this that are part of the story. This is a very odd tale about a boy who just wants some information about the Ottoman Empire, goes into his local library where he's been many times before, and he basically gets escorted down to the basement of the library to this labyrinth that he didn't know existed. He gets taken through a series of twists and turns by this old man to the reading room, where he gets locked in with a sheep man and a girl who doesn't speak but can still communicate through her mind. So they then have to figure out how to escape this reading room, and this was a dark, wild, fun ride. It was a super quick read, just the format of the book. I think it's around 100 pages, but you could probably, if you condensed it all, it would probably come out to like 40 pages. So this was really fun, and it has me wanting to get back to more Murakami. I gave this 3.5 stars. We then have a book that I listened to on audiobook from my library, and that is If Then by Kate Hope Day. So we followed the perspectives of 4 adults who live in a quiet mountain or volcano town in Oregon. And so we have their two of the perspectives are a married couple, and we follow their individual lives, the things that are happening in their lives, but then weird things start happening, and they each individually start seeing like an alternate reality. Sometimes they're seeing themselves, what is clearly themselves, or sometimes they're seeing like a deceased loved one. And so you follow their individual perspectives, and then also in the background is this what is happening that's causing this like alternate reality thing that's happening. Eventually you find out kind of what was happening, maybe that was causing this alternate reality situation to be happening, but ultimately we're looking at how our choices affect our future and what our life will become. In this, as these books are all BookTube Made Me Do It books, actually The Strange Library, kind of not so much on that. That's one I just picked up because it was on my shelf. But If Then by Kate Hope Day was strongly recommended by Russell from Ink and Paper blog, and I thank him for that recommendation. I gave this 4 stars. Finally, we have a favorite book of many, that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. We essentially follow a male and a female. They start off as kids who are being trained by magical adversaries to compete in a game. The only thing is, our characters don't know what the game is, what the rules are, how to win, or what is actually at stake. The venue for this game is the Night Circus, which is a extremely magical circus that happens at night. So the circus will show up on the outskirts of a town. The gates open when it gets dark, and they go all night long, and each tent is kind of curated by a different member of the circus. And it is fantastically magical, and there are many times where I felt like I could really see what was happening, but also at the same time knew that in person this would be so much more extraordinary. So we have kind of this game that's happening that as the characters are finding more about it, of course we find out more about it. It's not a romance, but we do have a love story, and this was just a really fun ride. I want more from Erin Morgenstern. I gave this 4 stars. So these are the books that I have read in the first half of May. Let me know in the comments, have you read any of these books, or are you interested in any of these books? Subscribe if you like what you saw here. See you around the tubes.